Good afternoon, guys. Welcome to the Columbia Chess Club. I'm James Brandmair, the president of the club. I'm sure most of you guys know me. I'm going to be giving a lecture tonight, but before I do that, does anybody have any questions for me or about the club or anything?
Question.
What's up?
So I'm free this Saturday. Is there anything going on?
Yeah, yeah. way to rope me in on that. Uh, well, this Saturday we are doing the South Carolina Blitz and Rapid State Championships. You can sign up for that right here at scblitz.com. So what this is it's going to be the state speed chess championship, and we'll be doing it at the top of Carolina, which is a restaurant that's 20 stories up downtown at the Capstone Building. As you see, you get a 360-degree view of downtown Columbia and the surrounding area. We're going to be giving out $3,000 in prizes and trophies and plaques to the top South Carolina player.
Cool.
Yep.
Are there any strong players signed up?
There are. So we can view that by going down to the registered player list. And right here at the top, we have Brian Smith, who is a Grandmaster out of Pennsylvania.
Oh, awesome.
We also have a local national master, Mike Saylor, and another local national master, Sam Copeland, along with another titled player, Uthra Pakisrani. Oh, yep, out of Charlotte.
Okay.
And Anthony Parker's also
Anthony Parker's, I believe he's also out of Charlotte. I know he plays a lot in Charlotte. And then, of course, we have our other experts and candidate masters from around the state that are coming as well.
Sign me up. Thank you so much for telling me about that.
You're very welcome. So remember, scblitz.com is where you sign up for that. Any other questions for the club? Okay. All right. Well, with that, I'm going to be giving a brief lecture on Emmanuel Lasker. I'm going to mainly go over one of his more famous games, not his most famous game, the one that everybody shows, which is his game against Pillsbury. Everybody shows that game, so I'm not going to show that one. So Emmanuel Lasker was the second world champion, and he was world champion for 27 years. So that means he held the record. However, there's some controversy over his tenure as world champion, because back then, before FIDE, the world champions themselves, along with their challengers, organized their world championship matches, and they also set it to their own rules that they wanted. And usually the main stipulation was the money. So if the challenger couldn't raise enough money to challenge the world champion, then the match didn't happen. Also, Emmanuel Lasker became world champion by challenging William Steinitz, who was the first world champion. And William Steinitz never turned down a challenge as long as there was money involved. So at the time, that made a lot of the other top players kind of salty, because they didn't think that Emmanuel Lasker was worthy enough. Because he was kind of new to the scene. He only won a couple tournaments here and there. He also tried to set up some other matches with some of the other world's strongest players, and some of them kind of told him, no, you're not good enough, you're not worth my time, or we're too busy with something. And so he was like, screw it, I'm just going to aim for the top, challenge William Steinitz, and won. And that made one of his main rivals, Tarash, some of you probably heard of him, very salty. So salty that in this tournament game that I'm about to go over, Nuremberg 1896, Tarash wrote a tournament book on that tournament, and I think he did something that has only been done once and has never been done again. He, at the back of this tournament book for Nuremberg 1896, he came up with a luck bar. He kind of like graded each of the players in this tournament by their level of luck, And of course, he gave Emmanuel Lasker the most luck. Like, this guy only won because he was lucky. Like, I've never heard that. He was so salty. I think, let's see, Teresh was also like to claim that the wet weather was the cause of his defeat. So, I mean, it's never his fault. It's either somebody's lucky or the weather. So there's that. So I can go into the game that I'm about to show you. It was the first round game, I believe, in this tournament. And Emmanuel Lasker was black. He played against Moritz Porges. Never heard of the guy. Don't know him. Apparently he was good enough to play with these strong players, but not much is known about him. One of the reasons Lasker was a tough man to beat was that he made use of his ideas in games years before they were discovered by the hypermoderns. Hypermoderns were a kind of a new school type of player. They like to come up with unorthodox ways to win their games. Like one example would be to control the center. Everybody knows to control the center. Right? So usually you're going to put your pieces in the center to control it. Well, hypermoderns like to control the center from the sides. So they would fianchetto and stuff like that. So he was kind of a pioneer, so to speak. So here he's going to demonstrate in this game that a restricted position is not necessarily a bad thing, especially when you're building up, and then you wait for your chance to explode. So the title of this lecture, or this presentation, is Every Move is a Threat. Kind of what this game goes by, because he has like 10 consecutive moves that show a threat of some sort. So let's see. We have E4, E5, and now we have a Roy Lopez with Bishop B5. Everybody's familiar with the Roy Lopez. Most people are. It's probably the most famous opening. It's been played thousands and thousands and thousands of times at the top level. So then, after Bishop E5, Lasker played Knight F6, which develops a piece. Lasker preferred it instead of A6, which is Lasker preferred A6. I mean, or he didn't like A6. He preferred Knight F6. Most people do A6 to kick the bishop. Castles. So Lasker wanted to capture this pawn because he deemed it an important pawn. Any of the king, queen, or bishop pawns are important pawns because they directly influence the center when they're used. So he has this advice that he likes to share. When you are conscious not to have violated the rules laid down, you should accept the sacrifice of an important pawn as the king pawn, queen pawn, or one of the bishop pawns. If you do not, as a rule, the pawn which you have rejected will become very troublesome to you. If you do accept the sacrifice, however, with the idea of maintaining your material advantage at the expense of development, such a policy never pays in the end. By far the better plan is to give up the pawn after your opponent has made some exertions to gain it. But very much, he's just going to take the gambit so that his opponent can't, make it a problem for him in the future. So once his opponent, tries to take the pawn back, he's going to focus on his own development. So we have D4, bishop E7. Queen E2. So they say this is stronger than taking the pawn here on D5. Can everybody see that screen okay, or should I make it a little bit bigger?
Would you like me to dim the lights?
You guys want the lights dimmed? Okay, we can do that. So once we got queen e2 in, his knight's under attack, so he's going to reroute it over here to attack this bishop. And now that the bishop's under attack, usually what we see here is we're going to have a take, and b takes, d takes, white gets his pawn back, and then we see almost like a fianchetto version of the knight. This knight is not so bad because he can reroute himself into the center. He can go here, he can come back over here, and come back to e6 and be well positioned. So this is just like a temporary inconvenience. When it gets to c5 here, it's going to exert a lot of influence, and it's going to be really good if it can get there. So then we have b3. So they say the fianchetto bishop is not particularly well placed here, as it exerts no pressure on black's position. Better would have been knight c3, or he could have even done knight to d4 to prevent black from playing d5. Castles, everybody knows the castle, right? Charlie, why would you castle?
To get my king safe and away from the center.
Okay, right, because all the action tends to happen in the center, so you want your king on the side?
Yep.
Castle tucked away safely in the corner? Bishop b3 and d5. So it's kind of a dubious move, but once he gets d5 in, they say, as a general rule of thumb, that black can equalize in nearly all king pawn openings. That's just a general rule of thumb. So that's probably why Emmanuel Lasker wanted to play it here. So then we have en passant. People know what en passant is? Is it a glitch?
It's a trick by the French.
I just like seeing en passant. All right. So, and we're going to take. He's getting his knight developed. And then now we have the first threat. We have this rook x-raying the queen. So it's going to be interesting to see how quickly black acquires a decisive advantage just because he decided to put his rook on e8. How many times have you guys been in a situation like this where you fall victim to a discovered attack? Like, for instance, like this. Now you would have your bishop hanging here and your queen, so of course you'd want to protect your queen, but then you'd lose your bishop. You guys ever fallen prey to anything like that? I see Nika nodding his head. Conrad's nodding his head.
Never.
Sean.
It's better than that.
So now we see rook f to e1 will reinforce the queen. It restrains the bishop for the time being. Instead, if we saw queen to d3, and then which would look like this, then we would see knight to c5. So that's why queen to d3 wasn't played. So then now we have bishop to d7, which protects the rook, a necessary step, as we shall see, while developing a piece. So as you can see, Emmanuel Lasker's game is looking pretty cramped, but it's going to springboard shortly into an explosive attack. So we have knight e4, an attempt at being aggressive, but it turns out to be a waste of time. The modest queen to f1 was safer, even though it seems to be an admission of helplessness. And now we have e5. Just kicks it. Go back home, horse. The knight was forced to retreat to the square it came from. If instead of knight to g3, we reply bishop to b4 would win the exchange for black. So let's look at what that would be. So here, knight to g3, bishop to b4, and now we have this rook and this bishop aiming at this rook on the back rank. That is not what White wants to see. You guys see how that would be pretty nasty? And now we have the bishop a3. Do you guys see what White would do in this position?
They would probably like take the rook and then get the bishop, something like that.
Queen takes e8.
Queen takes e8, but then the bishop will retake on e8. So we have,
That was the point of bishop d7, I assume.
right?
Oh, what about bishop e5?
Yeah, bishop e5.
Block the attack, the rook's attack on the queen with the bishop.
I worry about just f6.
Hmm.
Any question? Anything?
Queen a6.
There we go. I think
Would queen like takes on e8 be sack?
it would be a sack, but not a good one.
How interesting.
The bishop would just occupy the square.
We do have bishop to a5. So
Queen a6 was better.
so queen a6 loses a piece. So we have queen. If we saw queen a6, then we would have takes, rook a to b1, and then now we have knight to c5. Now he can't recapture that bishop because the knight attack puts pressure on that queen. So we do have queen to e5. And whoever said that followed up with f6 was correct. Now we have queen a6. So you guys are seeing the moves. Takes, takes. Where am I at? My notes. Queen takes a3. So look at that amazing, beautiful pawn chain. Now, once we have queen f6 in, this is everything that white wants. Or I mean, not everything white wants, everything black wants. You guys see how active and organized black's pieces look, where white has just been responding to threat after threat the past few moves. And now all of his pieces are disorganized. A general rule of thumb when I teach people what to look for in their games is you look for these pawn chains. See how black's pawn chain is aiming towards the enemy king? So what I tell my students is the direction, generally speaking, the direction of your pawn chain tells you where you need to put your pieces, where you need to flow them towards, because that's where you're going to have the most space to operate. And once you follow that general idea, then then you'll start to be able to see your tactics, because tactics flow from a superior position. That's generally how I like to play, is by simple chess. I'm a very simple player, so I'm going to start flowing all my pieces this way. Like I would get my rook behind my queen. I'd start maybe trying to get this queen to g5 or on this g file in particular, and maybe get my bishop on h3 and start, mounting the pressure, and then double up my rooks, and then white would have to overcome this pawn structure and have to regroup his pieces, and black's just going to move a whole lot faster. So once we have queen f6 in, does anybody want to take a guess at white's move?
Pawn C3.
Knight
Knight's in trouble. Pawn C3.
I don't think.
Protect the other.
C3. And then now we have that attack on f2. Queen's coming in, guys. Does anybody want to take a guess at the next threat that black has here?
Bishop h3.
Bishop h3.
Oh, well,
What do you see, Conrad?
No, I keep thinking I see things and then finding problems with them.
Well, does anybody know why white just played queen to c1?
Protect the hanging knight.
Check the hanging knight. Okay.
So,
So-
E3.
What was that?
E3.
Yeah, but I mean white will probably just move the knight away somewhere.
Yeah.
So another thing that I look for when I'm playing my games is I try to see how the pieces are placed in conjunction with each other. So do you see this rook and this queen here? They are in the perfect place to be forked by a knight and so that's probably what I'm going to look for, because now he's only two hops away from trying to fork here. So when you're playing your games, you need to pay attention to the position of your enemy's pieces, and always be on the lookout for potential targets, because once you start making a move like this, your opponent's going to have to reply. As Brandon has a book that he likes to recommend called Forcing Chess Moves. In my opinion, knight to c5 to d3 would be a very forcing sequence. Okay. So Horges decided to offer an exchange of queens. That's why he went knight to f1. He wanted to exchange queens. He has I've had enough. This is too much pressure. Let's swap queens. And another general rule of thumb that I use when I'm playing is if I'm attacking, if I'm the one leading the game, driving, and there's an exchange of queens on the board, but I'm more likely than not going to keep my queen, because that helps me with my attack. Now, if I see a tactic where sacking my queen gets me checkmate, then of course I'm going to do that. But that's not what this is. This is a simple trade. Borges was like, "Hey, turn down the heat. It's too hot in here. Let's trade queens." And Lasker's like, "Nope. I'm going to just slide back. I'm going to maintain this threat of forking your knight and queen."
If you traded queens, couldn't he then fork the rooks after that?
Not necessarily, because
Take him with the E rook.
right. So if he did this, then you can still come here, and then there's not a fork anymore. So now, to end that fork threat, we see rook to e3. see knight to d3 anyways. Emmanuel Lasker's just, he's trying to get all those pieces situated right to attack this king. So now we got queen to d1. So this is a position with black to move. Does anybody see what the next threat is?
C5.
You said, I heard c5. Anybody else?
E takes F3.
Takes f3? No? Nope.
EX
What's up? You?
takes
No, I'm not hearing it.
Bishop takes.
That's a threat, but I mean, white can easily just stop that by just pushing. I would imagine just going here. So that's not the move. What you? Knight c4. Well, there you go. f4. That's the answer. Because now we have a threatened checkmate. That would be mate in 1. Threatening mate in 1. So now white has to respond to that. We have knight to g3. Anybody know how to handle that? Arif? That's just giving white a knight. What was that, Nika? Knight d3. No, that's just huh? H5. That's the answer. H5. Then that knight has to be dislodged. We got to get rid of that knight. He's blocking our checkmate threat. So now white is saying, well, all right, if you want to do that, we're still going to block it by reloading. Now, this is probably the move of the game. This is another threat. This is probably a move that I wouldn't even see on the board. This is a world-class move, in my opinion. Anybody want to take a guess at what black does next? Arya, if you're good at tactics, what do you got? Knight takes g2. Brandon, what are you teaching this kid?
Apparently feng shui.
Well, because that's the move. That's the move. That's our brilliancy. I hope I don't have to play Arya tonight. All right. So the reason why Emmanuel Lasker did this is because this sacrifice will bring the king out into the open. So once we have king takes, now all of white's pieces can really start working, or all of black's pieces can really start working together. So now we have. Anybody want to take another? What's up? That's right. Rook takes. Now what's black's next move? This is going to be a beautiful combination. So think a couple moves ahead. What are you saying?
Bishop to H3.
Bishop to h3. That is right. This is pretty much a forced win at this point. All right, next move.
Queen to D4.
That's right. Okay, so now we're queen takes rook. Okay. Anybody want to take another guess of what the next move would be? Queen to e3. That's not it. No. There we go. We gotta remove white's defenders. We gotta start coming in for mate. They're just throwing out moves here.
Rook F6.
We're a few moves away from checkmate.
Rook F5.
Queen E3 check.
Queen E3 check.
Oh.
And he resigned here.
Oh yeah. I see.
That's mate.
And if the knight blocks, then the queen takes, right? Yeah, that might be.
Queen takes F5.
I mean, it's pretty much.
Maybe 11 if queen takes, but yeah.
I mean, it would be bad because now you're just reloading your rooks.
Yeah, it's.
You're coming in for the win. I mean, Porges just decided to throw in the towel. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's mate in 1, mate in 12. I mean, at that level, the world champion is gonna see it.
Yeah.
So, I hope tonight that this game inspires you in your classical game and over the weekend at the world, or I wish the world, yeah, the state speed chess championships. So that was 10 straight moves of threat after threat after threat, and Porges had no idea what hit him. That sidelined him, and Teresh was just so salty. He said, "Manuel Lasker just got lucky." Well, guys, a little lucky. Oh. Well, all right. Hey, Charlie, can you turn on the lights? Thank you. What's your question? Yes, we have a lot of coaches. You can find out about our coaches on our coaching tab at columbiachess.org. And Sean Miller is looking for students. What was that?
Just remind you before your hard drive.
Control. Well, how do I escape?
You gotta escape that?
Oops. Escape. Oh, let's escape. I don't know. There we go. So it's control?
Yeah, F11 when you press it, let's page up.
Oh.
So to enable the function, you press the function key.